Welcome to another edition of the Men's Room. I'm Linda Tilson, Transformational Re-Engineer of Life, and I am joined by Mikeul Bearded Wordsmith. And today we're going to do something slightly different. We are going to talk about everyday topics that come up in life, and you're going to hear more about what our opinions are, our views, and what we like to express when we go into conversation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge Mikeul to ask me a question, and I'm going to answer it. And then we're going to turn the tables. I'm going to ask him a question, and he's going to answer it. So what do you got for me?
Something that I'd like to talk about. We were talking about a couple of things before we had the podcast on, and one of them is your current stance on where you sit for a healthy work-life balance.
Oh, I love that question.
You should be doing for do more stuff with family.
So really with the healthy balance between life and work, I don't really see it as a work and life balance. That I'll say right off the bat. I don't believe there is such a thing. Well, what I do believe is that there are things that we can do that really increase our enjoyment between the two worlds. And the moment we're splitting in between either I have a healthy life or I have a healthy and balanced work environment, that's where it goes south. And so I like to think that I bring my whole self to work, and I bring my whole self to my family and home life. And if I can do that, and I don't have to be a chameleon and figure out where I'm going to be in both of those fronts and just come authentically who I am. And how I do that is I really don't like to divide the two worlds, as I've said. And what I do to bring that satisfaction to both is I really make sure that I'm taking care of all the areas of my life. So I'm really looking into making sure that I am eating healthily, I am exercising in some shape or form. I'm making sure that I am showing up fully and present in all of my relationships. And, some things that I like to do as hobbies, some people might consider them being work. I'm a highly creative person, and I found that when I can be creative in who I am and how I express myself, both at home and at work, then I'm in my place where I can really live authentically, and I'm not having to expend my energy in a way that feels like I'm trying to show up one way or another. I just am.
So what do you mean by being creative? Is that coming up with things to do at home, or is that sort of just being more of yourself?
That's an interesting way of asking it. And so for me, being creative means I can do things that light me up and inspire me. And so there's certain things I love to do. I really love podcasting. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we're here. The other creative thing that I like to do is I like to write haiku poems. And I'm always looking for like new ways to go about my day. So even creativity that way. And so, it could be going a different path or direction to the store in the car. It could mean that I am helping somebody to step into their personal place of power. To me, that's a creativity thing. And so I'm creative in a lot of different ways. And when I can do that, then I am just in this place where I can show up, be who I am. I'm excited about it. And I found that I pay attention a lot to my body. And so if I can speak and I'm not looking for like air to breathe, because I know sometimes when I get going, I'm, struggling to breathe. And I know that when I'm not feeling anxious, then I know that I'm in the right place, in the right space, doing the right things. And, for me, I can sense when everything is in alignment. And when I can do that, then both worlds are really one. And so that's why I say I don't believe in work-life balance, because it's all about alignment.
So you sort of change, you don't like staying in that same path. You like to change things up and sort of be
Yes.
creative with the options in which you're doing. And that's a good way to be, because as soon as you stop wanting to change, you become stagnant, you become stale, and you stop pushing your limits and finding who you really are with having a good personality and the type of human that you're going to be. So if you step back and you never went down those extra paths when you're going to the store or something, or you never helped people out, then you might not come across lessons that you could use for yourself later on. So by you helping that person get to the goal in which they seek, then you inadvertently come across lessons that you can use in your own life. You can use in other people's lives as well, because it's an area that you're pushing your limits in. You might not have been comfortable to do it, but you said, yes, I'll help you out because it's something you enjoy. You enjoy helping people. You enjoy that sort of change in lifestyle. So and that's sort of how I am as well with doing certain things. It's a good way to live your life, because I could sit here and not talk to anyone and be a recluse, but that's not going to achieve anything. It's stepping outside of my comfort zone, embracing the unknown, and embracing anxiety and stuff. It's being comfortable in those uncomfortable situations, and that's where most people fall short in that. They don't have the determination, willpower, or understanding that when you're in the uncomfortable situations, that's when you should double down and embrace it, because you're in an area of learning, and learning isn't a bad thing, because sometimes we learn lessons that we thought would have been valuable, but otherwise were just a harsh lesson, or we learn that we've messed up along the way because we have conversations with people and it puts things into perspective and we realize that we've done the wrong thing. And sometimes you can't take certain words back, you can't take certain actions, but it allows you to move forwards with the right mindset and continue to change things. Instead of staying the same and having that negative mindset or that negative mentality or that way of thinking, you can move forwards and help people. And that's the thing, is change involves so many different aspects of life. It's not just one specific thing. Like even changing one's outfit every now and again puts a new sort of perspective on who you are and how you are. You wear an outfit for the first time downtown and you sort of feel that confidence about you. You feel anxious about it as well, because you don't know how people are going to judge you. But it's knowing that it doesn't really matter what other people think. It's what you sort of think.
That's true. And so when you're talking about the getting uncomfortable and pushing through things anyway, can you share a time where you decided that, hey, I'm going to push through, see where I can go with something? When's the last time you did that? And how did that end up for you?
I go through that regularly, but the biggest one that I've had in probably a recent year or two is when I changed to the lifestyle of being an entrepreneur, looking at making my own business, starting doing marketing and stuff like that. And that was a big change in my life, from playing games 24/7 and smoking to quitting all that cold turkey and then doing a marketing role and learning things that I've never learned before, thinking that I wasn't capable. And there's many times where I still think that today, where I don't think I've got the skill set, but it's understanding that my perceived lack of knowledge might be someone else's or stepping stone, so to speak, on their journey. For me, it feels like I might not know anything, but to other people, I know everything and I know a lot of things. So it's about perspective, and that's what this journey sort of put into perspective, so to speak, as I say again. Other people on the entrepreneurial journey feel the same. We go through times of self-doubt, worry, anxiety. Am I doing the right thing? Should I just get a 9 to 5? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it's knowing that this process isn't black and white. There's going to be ups and downs in life. There's going to be things that you don't quite understand or things that happen all of a sudden. And it's an interesting journey, being an entrepreneur and embracing that change, because I could have stayed the same, could still be playing games and wasting my life away, but I've chosen more to embrace work and fall in love with the process of creating things, being a creator more than a consumer. And most people nowadays like to consume content and like to consume random things. And it is hard to break out of that cycle when all we do is consume, whether it be playing games, watching TV, watching movies, things like this. And it's doing those positive things that make a difference in your life, whether it be changing and going for a 5-minute walk every now and again, to going out and seeing family, and just doing a bunch of different things that can actually start improving your life mentally and physically. Most people are reluctant to change because they want to stay the same. They feel comfortable in their little bubble. They don't want to do anything different. So, and that's what I say to most people: embrace being uncomfortable, because if you always stay comfortable, life will chuck a curveball at you when you least expect it, and that's when you don't have the skill set required to deal with it.
I like that you shared your journey of where you were and why it's so important to be able to step in this space where you are pushing through. Because what I found on the entrepreneurial journey in particular, and I've worked with entrepreneurs, I am an entrepreneur, but what typically will happen is a person will go down the path and it's uncomfortable. And, the moment that they feel like they can't get unstuck and move forward, they throw in the towel and quit. However, what I encourage people to do, and what I've done myself, is that moment when I'm feeling like I want to just throw in the towel and stop, I keep going, because on the other side of that, I've always found my biggest growth occurred. And so I'm always saying, it's okay to go through the process, take some steps, and evaluate whether you're moving closer to your goal or further away, and continue to go down the path. And doing something for 1 to 3 months is not really enough. You got to get usually over that, do something for 5 months or more, then evaluate, are the things that you're doing, are they incrementally getting you to a place of progress, or do you need to take a step back and really assess what you could be doing differently? Because a lot of people will say, well, I've done all of these things, but then when you go to ask them what they've actually done, they are doing a lot of busy work. So, busy work is not progress. What's progress is when you are taking actions and then you can see little changes happening and you're not staying in the same place. And that is like the number one thing that I see, is that people will either quit too soon, or they'll try and change it up before they've actually given it a runway to see that they can take off. And so that's the killer of most people that don't succeed in entrepreneurship, is changing
I've
too
got a
much. Or
I've got a bit of an interesting twist. How would you incorporate that into parenting? Would you say that with parenting, it's a bit of a different flow, as in you've just sort of got to keep changing things as things change with you, because dealing with kids and stuff, because I know you've got kids yourself and you've encountered these sort of issues, you don't have one set strategy for them all, because they're all different. They all act differently, and they have different circumstances when they go to school and stuff like this. And would you say dealing with change when it comes to parenting is a bit of a hard thing to encounter, because it'll be very confronting? You'll have trouble sometimes when you doubt your efforts. You don't know the things you're doing when they're 5 will impact the things that the type of person they are when they're 25, so, for example. And what's some of the ways in which you've been able to find the right information to just help bring up your kids over time? Because I know a lot of parents nowadays as well are entrepreneurs and stuff, and they do struggle with managing that balance of having that bit of family time, going to the work, and then coming home and working on their own business. And sometimes all it is just getting that right bit of information around how to talk to your kids about certain subjects, or what activities to do with them, and scheduling things out. So saying you're going to go for this walk on this weekend with one of your kids, or you're going to go down to the soccer field or play a bit of football, either.
mm-hmm. Wow, I could talk on this probably for several hours straight, because there's so many different things that I do. You're right in that each of my children all have a different personality, and they're all motivated and demotivated in certain ways. So I've really paid attention to what motivates them, what excites them, what are their challenges, how they like to communicate. And one thing that I've shared is that I've always advocated that parents should not parent with the thought of making or creating their children into mini me's. Because that is interesting, place to be. I see a lot of parents that like, they want their child to go to the same college. They want them to play the same sports. They want them to go into the same career. And so there's a lot of pushing and prodding to get them to do that. And I've been like the opposite. I find out what they're interested in. I say, hey, let's go check that out and see what that career path is like. And the other area that I would say, as far as spending time with them, all three of mine all like to do different things. And so I've my youngest, he pretty much would like some of the entrepreneurial things that we're doing. That interests him. My middle son, we get excited about jumping in the car and going to the grocery store, or jumping in the car and going off to a park where we can go hike. My oldest, we like to hang out, and the fact that I get to sit in her chair and she gets to do my hair, and I get to be her transformational model. And so she gets to experience different techniques of cutting, dyeing, straightening, curling, whatever she wants to do. And we have such fun doing that. And so really, I've just really like looked into what they appreciate, and we try to do that. And I guess the other place that I would go in this question, let me see, how do I want to approach this? How I show up matters. So you know, as a parent, if I'm experiencing something that's difficult, then I like to share with them what it is that I'm doing to move through that difficult place. And so I very much want to walk the talk, and I explain to them how I'm going about something, why I'm going about something. And so that I do on a regular basis. And I think that that's really helpful, because if they see me telling them to proceed in a certain way, but I'm not showing up and doing it that way myself, I send the mixed message that I'm not really being authentic in who I am and how I show up and what I value when I don't do that. And so the biggest lesson, or learning that I want them to have, is be who you are. Always show up in the way that you, at the end of the day, you could always be proud of. So show up in the way that you're proud of. And if you fall into that place where maybe you did something you weren't so proud of, just to acknowledge that at that time you were doing the best you could in that situation. Take the learning from it and move forward. Don't hang out in that place. Don't let things define you and keep you stuck, or to keep you unmotivated, or even thinking that you aren't enough. I really want all three of my kids to think that they can be enough. And just recently we had a situation where we needed to come out a different place in the grade book. So there was some not passing grades. And so, there was some work that needed to get done. It was sitting in the chair, going through what strategies can we use to get the grade up, work on it, have consistency. And guess what? Mindset shift happened. There was a grade that went from failing to C. Now, that helped inspire not giving up in another area. And there's another class that wasn't passing. And I will say that the tests were retaken. They were done in such a way to bring the grade up, but it didn't bring it up to the passing. So here are two different scenarios. And so I always advocate, if you don't apply yourself and try to move forward, then the answer is you have no chance of moving forward. But if you apply yourself, you might just change the outcome of something and move forward. And so one of my children experienced both sides of the coin, but what it was is the realization that when I try, there's no guarantee that I'm going to come out to where I want, but if I don't, then there's no chance. And so that was the lesson. And I think that I'm always looking to teach lessons where they can learn it early on. So if I can work with somebody, I can, whether it's my own kids or a client, if I can change the trajectory when they're younger and they don't have to go as far to learn the lesson, I'm going to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't learn the lesson on their own, because I can give the answer key to the lesson, right? But that's not going to get them there. They have to experience it for themselves. And I found that when somebody experiences something in a positive way for the very first time, it's going to change their outlook on everything. And so that is like the number one goal, is always get them in a place where what would successful look like? What would good look like? How can I get there and experience that? Because once a person experiences something in a different way, a more positive way, then that's where the growth happens.
There's definitely an interesting perspective, and I to touch back on one of your original points with not trying to force your own agenda down your kids' throat with where to go and how to act, and that's got two sides of the coin. They either become an exact copy of you and an even worse version of you, or they completely resent the idea and resent the parent for it because they just want to do their own thing and not follow them. And that's an interesting thing when it comes to having an unbiased opinion and saying, well, you would get a lot of information from going to this school because I received a lot of good things, but it's also not trying to give them so much information that you taint their opinion. And that's the thing, is trying to remain open and giving the child the best opportunity available, whether it go to be college or high schools or things like this, because you might have 2 or 3 high schools around you and saying, I went to this one and it was an amazing experience, but then they might come back to you and say, well, I've heard some really bad things about this one. I might want to go to this one. And it's having that open mind and giving them the availability of choice. Because
Yes.
so many parents nowadays don't let their kids choose certain avenues, or they don't have the option to choose because of certain circumstances that they're going through with life, whether it be financially, location-wise, and other things. So it's understanding the more choice in which you can provide a child, the more they're going to flourish into the person that they are, the person they can be. And it is 100% learning from your own mistakes. You can sit there and teach them all the things in the world, but it doesn't mean they're going to listen. They're just going to be seeing you telling them something else coming from the same person that's taught them how to run, sprint, and do all these other things. So they're not going to take much value out of it. It's not until you have someone with an outsider's perspective talk to them do you realize that they say the same thing, but the kid listens all of a sudden. And it's because they have someone else from the outside, like one of their friends or something, saying, well, why don't you do this? Or why don't you try it this way? And it's not until they do say that sort of thing do you realize, well, he's actually had a big impact. Like, I've been saying the same thing for years, yet nothing's happened of it. And I think that comes down to, we often view family with a big rap sheet, so to speak, of their past actions and how they've done things. And more often than not, kids view their parents with a long list of things that they've done. And it is hard to take the advice of them at face value, because sometimes you don't know their intentions behind it. You might know the person 100%, you still don't know the intentions behind why in which they're saying it. Is the intentions the right things? They don't have enough clear communications behind it. And that's where sitting down, like you sort of said, and giving your kids the option to talk about things, to understand things, to discuss things. And it's good that you still have the relationships that you do with your kids, because it's good to have that relationship with your daughter where you can go there, have a chat about things. You might talk about boys or talk about work and things, and you can just get things off your chest, so to speak, and have a girl time, like have some one-on-one female time. But then you've also got that time with your second eldest where you can go out and do things, whether it be going for a walk, going into the car, doing stuff like that really matters to him. And these are the sort of lessons that will carry through to when they have kids, because it's these small actions that we don't realize have a massive impact on the way in which they think, the way in which they act, and what they do. So raising kids in today's society is extremely hard, and I'm sort of a believer of getting them off their phone and more quality family time, or just doing things outside, because like technology is a major part of society nowadays, but it shouldn't be a major part of raising a kid. Too many people do the opposite to what you do. They let the internet raise their kid. They let YouTube and TikTok raise their kid. They'll give them an iPhone or an iPad at the age of 2 or 3, and then wonder why they've got such a short attention span by the age of 6 and 7, why they struggle to learn things, why they're addicted to their phone and social media. And parents don't understand the unintentional consequences. They might give a kid an iPad and be like, oh, they're good now. They're happy. They're not disturbing me. That's all I wanted. They don't. don't want to be bothered. But little do they know, if you're taking the short-term win, you're going to get a long-term pain. And that's the thing, is most parents don't understand those small things that you do between the ages of 0 and 5, or even 0 and 10, have a massive role to play between the ages of 10 and 20. They don't understand that even those lessons between 0 and 10 can carry on further through their life. So, and by today's society, iPads and iPhones aren't the best thing to give to kids. It's more so giving them puzzles, giving them science projects to complete, giving them even Lego, things like that, to make them think outside the box, use their creativity, and limiting how much they let other people parent their kid. So you should be the parent of your kid at the end of the day, but you should also have an unbiased opinion when it comes to how, like, what school they should be going to, or things like that. There's nothing wrong with saying you should dress like this because you look more presentable, you look more respectable, and things like that. And that's not so much your own personal opinion, it's a societal opinion. That's what you should be dressing like. This is where you should be acting. This is the rights and the wrongs. And that I 100% agree with, and I believe parents should teach their kids. But when it comes to forcing, like saying that, oh, you should go play golf with me because I play golf all the time, and the kid might only be 8 and be like, I don't want to play golf, and then they start forcing it down their throat and wonder why they resent their parents so much now, or hate golf. And it's because of one of those reasons. They haven't given the kid the option of choice. They could have said, do you want to come play golf with me? I'd thoroughly enjoy it. And then if you don't want to do that, go play some soccer, some football, some of the badminton, I don't know, some of the other sports that there are available. So but I'll hand it back over to you and see if you've got any thoughts to touch on that, or any questions you'd like to ask.
I just wanted to comment that getting kids away from electronics and doing some physical activity, outside activity, is where we need to go back to, because COVID really took us for a loop. Because when I went to school, both high school and college, if you would have told me that I was going to someday have to do everything that I've done paper driven electronically, and that we weren't going to go in the office anymore, I would not have picked the profession that I have, because I feel like it's paper driven. And where I'm going with that is that, well, we have the society that's really plugged in, and we can like I couldn't speak to you if we didn't have the technology. There's no way that we would be having this conversation. So I appreciate technology, but at the same time, we actually need to go back to unplugging, talking face to face to people outside of technology.
So what's your thoughts on digital classrooms then, with because of COVID and things like this? Like, what's your perspective? Because this is something you would have experienced from your two youngest children, because they were going through school and stuff, and would have had to deal with it.
I will tell you, at the beginning of COVID, I had to do my job, and I was managing teams. And I also had to sit down with my youngest, and he needs assistance in his learning. And so all of a sudden I had to become a teacher and a babysitter while I'm supposed to be working. And we found that him doing school online was not the best. He did much better having it done in person. So I was very resentful of the online classroom, to be honest. However, as time went on, through that experience, it kind of gave me a different perspective on how do you work with people in the office, because now we're online. We have to figure out how to communicate. How do we teach topics? How do we document the work that we do in a way that can be taken in and be just as successful as the paper driven world, or even the in-person world?
Sorry about that. I was still listening. I just had to quickly go do something. When it comes to dealing with COVID and stuff, it was an interesting time. And that's when I lost my job, because I used to be a cleaner. And it was definitely an interesting learning curve dealing with such situations. Personally, for me, I sort of despised the things that happen, especially in Australia, because Australia's lockdowns were so harsh. We had some of the harshest lockdowns in all of the world. So Victoria down south, they had a lockdown for like a year. and everyone were confined to their homes, and it changed a lot of things in how they operated. And that's something that I've seen in the business space as well, is there's a lot more people now getting out doing things, because it's like locking your kid in the room with no toys, no nothing. They can't do anything. They can't speak to anyone properly. Then all of a sudden, as soon as they get the first chance to go outside, they're outside all day, every day, doing everything that they can possibly do, because it feels like their entire life has been lived inside, even though it's a short period of time. And that's what's happened with a lot of businesses and people nowadays, is we like that social interaction with people face to face, because it feels more genuine. Even though we're having a conversation through Zoom right now, it still feels like it's distant. It's not quite the same interaction of interacting with someone down the shop, because you can judge someone's social cues to a certain extent online. You can understand how they're speaking and the words in which they say. But when it comes to talking to someone in person, it feels a lot more natural, a lot more organic, so to speak, opposed to how everything feels talking to people online. And that's where, when it comes to technology and kids, it's definitely an interesting subject, because it is hard to know the consequences of what's just happened, because there's going to be kids, or there's kids out there today that have went from the ages of like 7, 8 to 11, 14, so to speak, and all they knew was talking online. And we don't know the consequences of what COVID had with this digital space and how everything should be online. Like, I know personally, I do certain courses online, and it is completely different to doing it in person. Online, it's a lot more up to you, a lot more responsibility on the person, because you have no one to sit next to talk to and get help from. You have no teachers that you could just call over and say, I just need one-on-one support. If you have a question, you have to ask it in front of the whole classroom. And that's where I feel some of these students were left behind, because the anxiety that they experienced through it, they didn't want to say anything, so they just dropped out. Like a couple of students that were in my class for my course, and we're all adults in this, but they still have that same sort of personality as what they would have a kid. They don't like to be on camera. They hate talking to the teacher when everyone else is there. They like to have a private space, and it's understandable. Like, I used to be that person as well, but it's knowing that things aren't going to change. We're going to go lean in more and more into technology, but it's a difficult circumstance. And one thing I'd like to ask you is, how has it really impacted you through the accounting space? Because you've been in accounting for so long. What's some of the benefits and disadvantages of technology and its uses?
Okay, so one of the benefits of what we had to go through as far as taking things to paper and putting it digital, it meant that people could work anywhere. And so that part was an advantage. But part of it could be the disadvantage in the fact that, we're not getting to it like in accounting. I like to touch things. I like to have my ruler. I like to have a tactile thing. And so one of the things I thought was a disadvantage is having to look at my ledgers online. I'm much easier, more versatile to looking at it on paper. And so I can highlight, I can underline, and so from that point of view, I can't touch what I'm working on and do it the same way. So I have to like highlight with my software, so I can highlight, I can add up numbers online with the Excel. And so I don't like working that way, to be honest. I like doing my hands-on. So that's just me. Some people love going the other direction and being able to do it that way. So really, I guess it depends on how you learn and how you like to do things. It's kind of like, I actually don't even like to read digital books. There's a time where I just want to get away from the computer. I want to touch the book. I want to highlight the book. I want to, and so I'm kind of old school in that way. So I had a hard time trying to adjust to going from what I've always known with the paper going to the digital. Whereas young people, that my kids, they actually had to learn that's how they learned. I mean, they pretty much my son probably pretty much didn't really do too much hand and paper. And so, the things like cursive went away. And reading a book and holding it and sitting in your bed reading it kind of went away. I tended to give them both options. Here's the paper book, here's the online, you can listen to it, you can do the two together and have kind of more of a immersed experience. Let's see, what else can I say about the pros and cons of going digital. I will
A
say,
couple of them would be, oh, you go.
oh, I was going to say the one thing I noticed, just, I mean, it's not necessarily accounting related, but it's office related. The number of meetings that a person has to go through, you get fatigued always turning on your camera and looking at people. It's like this thing where you want to see the people you're talking to. So there's times where there's meetings where everyone has turned off their cameras, and you know that they're multitasking, they're not listening, they're not engaged. So that's the part that gets tricky, is how do you get the balance of having a productive meeting where people are engaged and you get things done, but not being so tired. Because when you're online for several hours of every day, you really truly get fatigued. It sets in pretty quickly. Whereas when you're in person, you've got some space. You get up and you go walk down the hall. You go on a walk maybe on your break. And so when we're at home doing this, it's not the same at all. And so really I like the hybrid approach, doing a little bit of both when you can. It's just more productive.
I guess I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum with that. Is I've sat in online classes for 6 to 8 hours straight.
Mhm.
And for me, it's not so much a bad thing because it depends on the person and the type of person they are. For me, I'm sort of leaning in towards having longer sort of meetings. It is good to have in-person meetings, but having online meetings allows for diversity when it comes to different time zones and stuff like this. It allows for location diversity and things like that. That wouldn't be possible without the advent of Zoom and Google Meet and these other types of softwares that we can use. Like, it definitely 100% agree with you when it comes to having someone that attends and then someone who's actively participating in the conversation. Those are two big different things. And there's a lot of people that attend, but they're not actually checked in. They're checked out. They're doing something, scrolling on their phone, checking the computer. They're doing stuff that isn't relevant. And then you ask them a question, they're like, what? I didn't realize you were talking to me. And you can tell straight off the bat that that's one of the things that online meetings does fall short on. And it's establishing earlier on that if you're not attentive and you're not actively participating, then there's going to be some, I wouldn't say consequences, but they're not going to be as looked upon as lightly, so to speak. There's going to be actions, and that's what's happening in our classes. A lot of people like to sit with their cameras off. They sit there and just piss about their time and just not do anything important. And they've soon realized that those sort of actions have negative consequences. They're not getting the support they need in class because they're not showing up and actively participating. They don't really care. If someone really cares about something, even if they've gone through 5 hours of meetings, they should still be the same person from the start to the finish. Yes, they'll be a little bit more tired, they'll be a bit fatigued, but they should still be showing up in the same caliber regardless. And that's sort of what I've come to the conclusion of. And it can be a good thing when you're in you're going to have a 3-hour meeting and it's establishing with the people in there, okay, at the hour and a half mark, we're all going to go for a 10, 20 minutes break, go for a walk, get something to eat, do something like that to just sort of reset, give some people some time to think about what's happened and how things have happened. And it's something that's businesses are still struggling to account for when it comes to understanding that right balance between how much do we have online, how much do we have in person, how much time do we give the person to absorb the information. So, and it's realizing that if you were to sit in a 3-hour meeting, there's going to be people jumping up, going to the bathroom and stuff. There's going to be people going to get food. And it's establishing regular times within that, because no one person can sit there for 3 hours and not have some sort of break, even if it's a 5-minute break, just to sit there, check a couple of emails or do something else. So you're zoned out for a little bit and then you come back into the meeting 100% again. So if you don't have any breaks or nothing like that, and same with school, if these online classes never had breaks, the kids would not be wanting to go. It's good that they have these sort of breaks, but it's also an interesting time to keep them accountable. So most kids don't realize there's a lot of responsibility upon them when they take online classes opposed to in-person classes. in person, a lot more things are done for them. They can zone out. They don't have to have a full attention, and they can still be present in the class. But when you're on an online meeting, it's all up to you. You're the person who's responsible for yourself. You're responsible for actively listening and stuff. Because I know when I was in class, when I was in school, it's a completely different atmosphere to what it is nowadays having an online class. So it's an interesting perspective, and something that I wasn't expecting to enjoy in a way. It's a good sort of disconnect, because I can jump on a meeting on my phone and walk around the entire house and still be actively listening. I just don't have my camera on sometimes. But when you're at school, it feels like a lot more monotonous. It feels a lot more like it wears you down. And it's probably same for your role, is you have some in-person meetings talking about accounting subjects that you know the answer to. You know there's a solution there, but they have to break down the solution, go into depth about it, and you're like, well, why don't we just start implementing it instead of discussing it? And when you're online, you can sort of disconnect in a way. So it does have its advantages and disadvantages. And one of the big disadvantages is lack of opportunity for people that are not well off, because they might not have the money to have a computer to sit at home and study. And that's a big thing that did happen as well. I noticed, especially in America, a lot of kids struggled to get the funds required to jump on online meetings and stuff where they couldn't go anywhere because of COVID. And COVID did have a lot of negative impacts, and it's still having negative impacts today, especially on the economy. We're still feeling the effects of everything that's happened there. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on this, or like to ask me any further questions, even questions not related to the subject?
Yeah, I just was thinking, and like, and to wrap up the conversation, we've talked a lot about the positive and negativity to the online and digital world. And one thing that I've noticed is that people are still struggling with how to communicate and have relationships. That part is still a struggle, because when you're online all the time, you aren't out speaking to people. There are some people that didn't do so well with that, and they became off to themselves, and ended up with social anxiety, and then they have to go out and see people, because because talking to someone on a screen could be easy. Going and talking to them in person is all of a sudden that much harder. And one of the things that I know that I miss, because I started thinking about it, we used to be in a day and a time where when you wanted to talk to somebody, you would jump on your bike and go to their house. I'm thinking of a kid, being a kid, or you would, as either like an adult, you pick up the phone and just call your friend. Now what we do is we say, okay, we'd like to meet. Can we meet on Tuesday at 1 o'clock? And let me send you a Google Meet or a Zoom request. And that's how we're going about, rather than just picking up the phone and calling, dropping by somebody's house and just, surprising them. Hey, I'm over to go do something with you. You want to go do this? And so all of a sudden we're over scheduled on everything. It's like, if it's not digitally scheduled, then we're like not reaching out to people or doing things that have some spontaneity to them. So having some spontaneity to what we're doing, and going out and seeing people and not feeling all anxious, and just learning how to communicate with people, not at people. That's the biggest observation that I've seen, both in personal and work life. Really, it's not. There's some work that needs to get done again.
So I definitely agree with what you're saying there. And I come from the perspective of being raised around games and playing online. And that was one of the things that really did impact me. And I still have some social anxiety to some extent. Like, I can sit in a virtual classroom, have 30, 50 people in that classroom, feel fine. But as soon as I enter a situation where I've got 30 people around me or 50 people around me, I sort of tend to shut myself off to them, not be as open-minded, and sort of be a recluse. And that's something that's definitely impacted me negatively. And it wasn't until I understood this, and one of the big things that did help was getting a job in a retail space, as well as being a cleaner in massive supermarkets, because you're having to talk to people constantly, and you're able to try and test different conversation starters, how you should talk to someone, and different things like that. Most people nowadays, we're all online, and that's where there is a big disconnect from online world and normal world, I'd sort of put it, because being online 24/7 does have its benefits, but it also has a lot of negative effects as well.
Mhm.
So most people don't realize that if you're online 24/7, you're speaking to people 24/7, yes, you'll get communication skills, you will develop certain things, but then you'll be presented with circumstances when you're in person that you don't know how to deal with. Whether that's a good example is a confrontation. On a confrontation online, you just turn your computer off, you turn your console off, and you tell them to piss off, and that's all that happens. But a confrontation in person can be a very different thing because it could be a matter of life and death depending on where you are in the world. You could come across someone and you have a confrontation, all of a sudden they pull a gun on you or they pull a knife on you, and it's not having the necessary information to deal with that circumstance. So that's one thing that I've realized, that more people just need to be genuinely themselves and have more life experience. And you only get life experience by experiencing things in life itself. No one person can be like, oh, I got all my life experience from online. That's far from the case, because you won't be able to gain certain things. You won't know how to pick up a girl or talk to them. You won't know how to greet another person in the correct way, or even shaking hands, or understanding um, physical things that you look out for in a person. Like, are they constantly fidgeting? Are they constantly moving around? Are they standing still? And when you're online, it's hard to tell those sort of things. You don't know if the person might have ADHD, if they're worried, if they've got anxiety about you, a range of symptoms. And I'd sort of, yeah, to end the conversation, say that more people just need to get outside, touch grass and lift weights, as I say. It's a good way to be, and looking after your body and stuff, but also having time to understand that there is nothing wrong with online time. Just keep the online time shorter than what you would for going outside. One of the other questions that I wouldn't mind asking you, let's see if I can remember it. What's your perspective on how things have shifted with the current way in technology and AI? Do you believe your role and job will be taken over by AI in the future?
Oh, that's interesting that you mentioned that. And so I know in the industry that I'm in so state government, technology for, the technical world, that it's already been presented that, oh, you could have this software as a solution where there can be an AI component. So you no longer key in invoices. All of a sudden, you can upload an invoice and then scripts can be written. So that way, that keying that a human would normally do would be done by the scripts and programmed in. And so I thought, well, that would be great. So there's some monotonous jobs that aren't very exciting, and maybe data entry, I would think, would be one of them. I could see AI coming in and doing that. And I think that that would be great, because if the AI can do some of those repetitive, repeatable tasks, then that frees us up to be able to do more analysis, more thought, more innovations, and we can spend more of our time on those tasks versus the mundane competitive tasks that we'd rather not be doing. And so I don't think it's going to end jobs. I think it's going to change the types of jobs that we have, because somebody is going to have to do the programming of the AI to teach it how to do those tasks.
That's the
And
thing, is it will end jobs. It's just going to end jobs that weren't quite necessary. It's like when the tractor came along. A lot of people were out in fields plowing them by themselves with horse and cart and doing things. And then the tractor came around and they thought it was going to change the world. It was going to end farming forever, but it was far from the case. It stopped people from getting those meaningless jobs that were repetitive and stuff. And there's certain AIs out there already that can do the accounting side of things. We've got AI incorporated into certain accounting softwares that I've looked at for the course that I'm doing, and they do data entry. So you'll input all your spreadsheets, all your data into these softwares, and then they'll have the AI run through them and find discrepancies in the invoices and the check and balances sheets and everything like that. And it's good to have those types of softwares because it does free up. You might be sitting there for 5 hours checking through all these bits of sheets, and you might get there in the fourth hour and miss one.
yes.
And then you'll wonder why your numbers don't add up. And it's good when you've got an AI that's able to go through and systematically check these things, because it does make life easier. One of the big roles that I've seen that's going to be massively beneficial for people is prompt engineering for these AI, learning how to write prompts for these AI to get the responses in which they do. And for me, I've sort of learned how to train AI, certain types of AI softwares, which has definitely helped because I can make it a virtual assistant and have it do a lot of the things that I want. There's AI tools out there now that will get an AI and use it to make another AI, which is something that's sort of ingenious and sort of worrying at the same time, because there's a lot of AI tools coming out nowadays for malicious purposes as well as beneficial purposes. And I do thoroughly believe that it will replace jobs. It'll just replace the jobs that were never really important to begin with and give people the opportunity to get more vital roles. And it's the thing, the other thing that I've experienced too is there's a big pushback against AI. It's like when the internet came out, people thought, oh, it's not going to stay around. It's just a fad. It's just this. It's not vital. And those people that said that, they got left in the past because they were reluctant to use it. They didn't understand the potential in which it had. And right now, AI is like the first iPhone. Where we currently sit with AI is like iPhone 1. Everyone thought it wasn't going to be the best phone. It was shit. It didn't have the best features. And then you look at iPhones nowadays. There's been so many more iterations since then that iPhones can do so much more. And that's how AI is going to be, except I believe AI will advance a lot faster, and we'll be going through shifts in technology every 3 months to 3 years, because there's a big quantum computer being developed in Queensland, Australia. And once they've put an AI with that quantum computer, we believe there's going to be massive changes in the way an AI conducts itself, how it can rewrite itself, the new materials that it can make and technology that it can produce. So we are on the precipice of massive change, and it's an interesting time to talk to people about the use of AI. And soon, like roles like teachers are going to be non-existent because there's going to be AIs out there. Like right now, ChatGPT and Gemini and these other types of tools are already teaching people so much more than the teachers could actually do. And I've seen a lot of cases where you have students in class, and that's one of the disadvantages of being online. They can just get the answers from Wikipedia or whatever. But with AI, it gives you the availability to input the entire question or the entire subject that you're studying and get them to spit out the answers like they were speaking for you. And that's sort of a part of how you train it to be yourself. But with how Gemini is, you can get it to ask questions and then prove the teacher wrong, because the teacher might have a misinformed point of view or a biased opinion that they don't want to speak upon. And that's interesting, but at the same time, AI can be extremely scary when you have biased coders that input code into it that change it for malicious purposes, or the recent one that I've seen with Gemini, how they had a bunch of black coders go through and make the founding fathers black. You'd ask them for the founding fathers of America, and they all came out as black people. And that's nowhere near the truth. They gave it a biased opinion instead of just coding it and letting it learn from the information available from the data that it's received. So it's understanding that we're in an interesting time, a time of change, but not necessarily a bad or a good time, just a time of change. And even for me, marketing has seen some massive changes with the use of AI. Marketers will never become redundant because AI will, I don't believe, become capable of interpreting emotion and different styles of word. They will get to a certain point with advancements, but I never believe they'll fully understand the way in which a human works. And humans think at an insanely fast speed, and we're able to do things that AI still can't do at the moment. Depends on the person you speak to. You might speak to a historian and they can spit out a big blurb within 2 seconds of asking a question. Same with AI. But when it comes to certain online jobs like marketing, it's using AI to leverage different tools. For me, there's AI softwares out there that can help me with proofreading my text that I say. If there's any grammar errors, any punctuation errors, there's AI out there that are artificial human, and they sit there and they'll have people do these ads and stuff, and you would have seen these ads already and not even realize that it's an AI producing this video or this photo and getting you to look through the ad or read the ad. And that's sort of where we're at. It's giving us tools to use. And same with accounting. It's mainly a tool to be able to do the job more proficient. And accounting, I do believe, will get to the point of being taken over by AI, because accounting is mainly just dealing with a lot of numbers and stuff like that and data. And that's one thing AI is really good at, but you're still going to be looking at probably another 3 to 5 years away from it being 100% foolproof to be used in massive industries such as yourself, because once it's implemented into your industry, it's going to change everything for better or worse. This is something that we still remain to see. And I'm hoping it doesn't remain like, doesn't turn to this example of Skynet and Terminator and things like this. So I do believe that we will have a different outcome, because movies always portray things as the worst extreme. But the way AI is advanced, there's already AI robotics out there at the moment that is absolutely phenomenal. There's so many things that's are just absolutely ingenious. But I'll hand it back over to you to close the thoughts off, because we're near to the end of the podcast.
Well, I really enjoyed the conversation that we've had today, taking in technology, taking in, the need to be able to balance out our lives, so that way we can be our full authentic self. So we've kind of taken today's conversation and really brought to our audience a little bit about our values, our beliefs, how we see the world. And so it's been a great conversation. And I guess I'm going to have one more question for you, because I want to know where you weigh in on this. Would you rather be someone that leaves a legacy, or would you rather be someone that lives a legacy, a living legacy, that is?
Why be one where you can be both? This is something that I ask to people: is what do you want to be remembered by when you pass, and what do you want to hand down to the future generations that you're going to be having? So if you cannot come up with these sort of answers to the questions, then you might need to have a look at what you're doing in life and the legacy that you want to leave. I'd rather be the person who lives it and leaves it, because that way I can hand it to future generations. There's so many people out there nowadays that are still carrying through legacies of their fathers, their grandfathers, and their great-grandfathers. And it's an interesting thing to see. A good example is like some of the big gun companies and stuff in America. They started off with an original idea, and then they've improved and iterated on that idea since then, and still carry through the legacy. Like Colt. Colt was an amazing brand, and still is an amazing brand to this day. And you've got certain companies like clothing brands that are still around, and they've been around for hundreds of years. They've got pottery businesses, and not enough people realize the legacy of certain businesses that they can have. Like e-commerce isn't really a legacy to leave. It's more so just a temporary business, but it's more so realizing that certain businesses can have a massive impact, like a shoe business. You can have that legacy last for a long time. There's still shoemakers out there today that are carrying through the lessons that their fathers taught them. Boat making is one that is an interesting one as well. Making boats from wood and making them from scratch is something that's not as common, but it still gets passed down from generation to generation. And I do believe people should think about the actions in which they take and the legacy that they want to leave. So knowing that, I'm going to close it off for the day. And one of the things I wouldn't mind saying is don't forget to like and subscribe. It definitely helps us out with the algorithm and helps boost the video to further people. But yeah, that's all for today. I hope you all have an amazing day.
Thank you. And we will see you on the next edition of the Men's Room.